Welcome to Live the Dream with yours truly, Marty Kaiser. Buckle up and let's get started. Happy Friday, everyone. This is Marty Kaiser with our Friday edition of Real Estate Tidbits. Hopefully everybody is staying warm. The temperature as of 1 o'clock today on Friday is around 55 degrees, but it feels colder. I've lived in Florida a good number of years, but I'm a transplant from the Northeast, and I swear every year it seems like I feel colder when the weather changes. Gets soft, I guess your blood thins, whatever the case may be. So anyway, dress warmly. I know I'm still doing my outdoor exercising, but I definitely put more layers of clothing on. So I wanted to keep you guys warm, so we'll go over some hot topics today. And the first thing we'll go over is some real estate information. One piece of good news that came out yesterday, this was in an article I read in homes.com, which is a pretty good real estate source and usually pretty accurate information. The average mortgage rate in the U.S. As of Thursday of this week, actually, went down to the lowest average in 3 years. The national average right now is 6.06%. Just to give you a frame of reference, a year ago, the average rate was at 7.04%. The last time that the 30-year rate was at the level it is now was in September of 2022. Now, for those of you that can afford a little higher monthly payment, the 15-year rate is 5.38. So all those things are good news. It's not like hugely less expensive, but a 1% drop in a year is significant. And hopefully we'll continue to get some gradual decreases in the coming quarters of 2026. So you're starting to see, I think, people gearing up, getting off the sidelines a little bit. I know I've talked with a lot of people recently, and January typically is a little slower month for us in Orlando. And I definitely have a lot more customers that are going to be coming online in the coming months, either putting their houses for sale or looking to purchase. A lot of what I find when I deal with consumers, some of it is actuality, in other words, what's actually going on. And a lot of it has an equal thing to do with psychology or perception. How do people feel about things and what's their perception of things? So we've had a mixed bag on that, but the real estate data looks like it's promising. Secondly, I wanted to go over three tremendous opportunities that I wanted to mention that we have for sale right now. They happen to be 3 homes in Hunters Creek, and they're all very attractively priced. We have one that I think is the best value in Hunters Creek without question right now. It's a 3-bedroom, 2-bath in Hunters Creek in the Mallard Cove section. It's a pool home. It's in excellent condition. It's got double pane windows, which is a really nice feature. It's got a new air conditioning system. And so it's a tremendous situation, and the price is $437,500. I think that house is going to go quite quickly, and so I wanted to make everyone aware of that. Secondly, we just put a new listing on the market this week. It's in Mar Vista, which is one of our more desired sections of Hunters Creek. This particular home is a 5.5. The nice thing about it is the 5th bedroom is also ideal for in-laws quarters, or it can be used as a bonus room depending on your situation, but it does have a closet and it does have a bathroom up there, so it is a true 5 bedroom. It's a big fence corner lot, has a nice pool area. Again, the home has been well maintained, and it's priced at $634,900, which for that section of Hunters Creek is a tremendous value. Last but not least is a very spacious, pristine waterfront home. It's 1/3 of an acre. It's a sprawling one-story home, over 3,300 living area. It's a 4-bedroom, 3.5 bath, and it has an asking price of $849,900. And that particular seller is pretty flexible in terms of coming up with different concepts to make deals come together. So if anybody's interested in more details on those 3 properties, please let me know. I can be reached at 407-595-9700 or marty@floridasells.com. And Hunters Creek inventory is starting to slowly increase. As of this morning, we're up to 49 homes for sale. And just to give you a frame of reference for that, approximately a year ago, the listing inventory in Hunters Creek was about 30% lower. So the good news for that is we've truly reached what I call an equilibrium, in the sense that buyers and sellers are pretty much on even footing. So on some properties, sellers are more negotiable. A lot of the negotiations have to do with what type of home it is. In other words, is it in the type of condition where a buyer can move in and not change anything? On the flip side, is it more of a traditional home, which is what the majority of homes are, where every customer is going to put a little bit of their own taste into it? So that accounts a little bit more for pricing strategy and negotiation philosophy. I'm going to transition a little bit because this is a busy sports weekend, do some sports updates. Probably what's foremost on most sports fans' minds right now are the NFL and college football. NFL playoffs are down to 4 teams. We're down to 8 teams rather, my bad. These are what we call the divisional round. So we've got some excellent games coming up this weekend. The late game on Sunday night features the Cardiac Kids, the Chicago Bears, and they're facing the Los Angeles Rams. I call the Chicago Bears the Cardiac Kids because they've come out of nowhere. They were a below-average team last year, and this year they seem to be one of these teams of destiny. You watch them play, and for 3/4 of the game, they don't look like a very good team at all. And then they've been able to pull out games in the fourth quarter after significant deficits. The Rams should give them a good game. I would say the biggest issue in this game is going to be the climate. It's a home game for Chicago, and it's going to be extremely cold there. So that typically is a big advantage when you're playing a West Coast team, because the Rams play in controlled facilities in Los Angeles, and of course the weather in the West Coast is a lot nicer. So historically, teams in warm weather climates in the playoffs, when they're faced with these extremely cold conditions, are at a disadvantage. They're expecting the wind chill factor in Chicago this weekend to be under 0. I would say another really interesting game are the New England Patriots playing in New England against the Houston Texans. That should be an excellent game. Houston has probably got the best defense in the league this year, and New England has been a remarkable turnaround story from last year, and they have one of the top quarterbacks in the league in second-year quarterback Drake May. The other top defensive team is the Denver Broncos. They're playing at home this weekend against the Buffalo Bills, and that should be an excellent game. The critique of Denver is they've had erratic quarterback play, which is not a good thing for the playoffs. The Buffalo team has been one of these teams that always falls short. They've probably got the best quarterback left in the playoffs in Josh Allen, and he's kind of single-handedly keeps the Buffalo team afloat. However, their skill players are a little bit lacking at the receiver position, so that should be a very good game to watch. And last but not least are the San Francisco 49ers going against the Seattle Seahawks. Seattle had the best record in the NFC this year, and they just played San Francisco a few weeks ago and handled them pretty easily. San Francisco's been kind of a fun story because they've had an unbelievable amount of injuries, and they've overachieved. Arguably, they're the best coach team in football, led by Mike Shanahan, and they have a really good quarterback in Brock Purdy. So that should be a very good game to watch. Flipping to college football's playoffs are down to the national championship game, which are the final two teams. That'll be on Monday night. The Indiana Hoosiers are playing against the Miami Hurricanes. And Indiana is a significant favorite right now. Indiana has just steamrolled everybody on their way to an undefeated season. Miami's got a very good club also. I would say the biggest variable in this game, which is why I don't think it's a given that Indiana's going to win easily, is because Miami's playing at home. Usually in the college football playoffs, they play on what we call predetermined venues well in advance. And it just so happens that this year the venue is Miami. So Miami's going to have a big home field advantage and a lot of fandom. So it should be interesting. My personal selection in this game, based on the way I evaluate the talent, is Indiana, I think, will prevail in that game. So that's a little bit more about an update in sporting events. One thing that I'm going to kind of pivot to that not only covers sports, but some of the other things that we deal with in daily life is salaries, inflation, and affordability. Well, what do I mean by salaries? Well, that's more sports and entertainment oriented. You know, when you see what people are making right now in these different activities, for example, the NBA basketball league, you'll see like what they call a mid-level salary for players is $15 million. You'll see some of the top players getting upwards of $50 million. And so what does that do? Well, it's made basketball hard to trade players because they have a lot of different rules and salary caps and such. The salaries, though, are just phenomenal. I mean, I'm all for everybody making as much as they can. This is capitalism. I do, however, think in a sport like basketball, the average salary is just kind of ridiculous. So what has that done? Well, it's made the tickets prices in the NBA very expensive. And that's why you see the NBA, a lot of corporations and such control a lot of the season ticket holders. And it's, you know, I'll use Orlando. We're what we call a small market team. So you get, if you want to get good seats in an Orlando game, it's probably going to run you $100 to $200 a game. Now, sometimes it'll be more if it's a top team. Sometimes it'll be a little bit less if it's a poor team, because they have what's called tiered pricing. So the more demand, the higher the prices are. So let's do the math for a second. Let's just say you're paying, I don't know, $150 a ticket. So that's $300 if you take your significant other with you, or you take a child from your family. That's just for a family of two. If you want to take a family of four, it's double that. But let's just stay with a family of two, so that's $300. You get parking, that's another $20. Now you want to eat food in there. So before you know it, an average night, if you want to get pretty decent seats in an Orlando game, is $400. Well, $400 is significant. So I'm not complaining, I'm just citing facts. So what's the solution to that if you're a fan? Well, the only way to get prices adjusted, which is probably never going to happen, is to not go to the games. If people, I would say, do what I call a semi-boycott, the teams are going to have to readjust their thinking, because right now the teams are making a ton of money, the players are making a ton of money, and the fans are paying ridiculous amounts of money for these things. This also takes place in entertainment. I've got a daughter of concert-going age, So, sometimes she wants to see, the big entertainers like Taylor Swift and some of the other ones. I know Bad Bunny's really popular nowadays. And the prices of these concerts are just ridiculous. They go in these big venues. For the most part, they're not very personalized. And they're paying crazy amounts of money. I mean, but again, as long as people are going to pay the tab, the prices are going to keep going up on those. And there doesn't seem to be any stoppage of prices going up. Another thing that you see with prices is streaming TV. Number one, it's confusing. I know a lot of people complain about it. You got all these different streaming options, all these different premium channels charge more money. They all go with this automatic renewal thing, so they make it hard to cancel. Or like the NFL, for example, again, we get back to sports. They're on besides the networks, they're on Netflix, they're on Prime, they're on Peacock, and I'm probably missing some. Now, I've kind of drawn a line in the sand for myself, and I'm a big football fan. But for example, I refuse to pay for Peacock. And the same thing if you like certain television shows. Like one of the shows that we like is The Pit. It just restarted for season 2. It's a show about ER. Well, to get The Pit, you have to have HBO Max, for example. Now, we're big followers of Netflix, and all things being equal, I think Netflix is fairly reasonable when you see the quality and the volume of the content. So we've made a value decision to have Netflix, which I'm sure millions of Americans have. But these are just some examples of the cost that we're faced with in the United States. And that's why, those are also blended in with inflation. I mean, these things are what I call elective items. You don't have to have those to survive and have a good quality of life. You don't have to watch TV that much. You don't have to go to sporting events that much. We complain about high real estate prices, but you need a roof over your head. You want to be in a safe area. You want to be in an area with good schools, and you want to be in an area that's convenient to a lot of the things that you go to, whether it's airport, the theme parks, going downtown, going to the beaches. So at least with housing, I mean, your whole family's benefiting from it, and it's probably the most important thing that you're going to deal with. So right now you're going to pay more for that. But with all these things that I mentioned, it's made life different in the United States. But again, the consumer can bellyache about it, or they can make a decision to I don't want to say boycott these activities, but to not do them or cut back on them. It's just like when you go out to eat. Everybody likes going out to eat because, people get tired of cooking meals at their home, and it's a nice out to get away from the work grind, et cetera. Do some fun activities with your family or significant others. But it's expensive. Just to give you an idea, one of the restaurants that we go to is Kobe Steakhouse. And we've gone to Kobe Steakhouse for probably 25 years. And part of Kobe Steakhouse's attraction, it's what they call teppanyaki cooking. They cook at your table. And the chefs put on a performance for you. And it's a fun place to go. And, they do a good job there. And a lot of my family members, that's one of their favorite places to go. But like the last time that we went there, without getting much of any alcohol, you don't get any desserts typically. We had a family of 5, and it ran over, I believe from memory, it ran over $200. Well, that's not insignificant. And it's good food, but it's not, it's not gourmet food. And your portion controlled there. They try to give you a lot of filler food, like your typical filet mignon portion, if you get steak on there, is 5 ounces. Anyway, I myself, I kind of question the value sometimes, so accordingly, I don't go there that frequently because I'm more about not just affordability, but I like to look at value, and that's a personal preference of mine. It's just like when I show customers real estate, I'll tell them for what they're looking for, what's the best value I would recommend to them. I think people feel a lot better about their purchases too when they feel they're getting a good value for it. But again, I'm not complaining because if I don't think Kobe's good value, I don't have to go there. Nobody puts a gun to my head to go there. So I think these are some things that people need to address because we see a lot of complaining, but we don't see a lot of action. Now, kind of on a related front, but not exactly, is what's going on with our immigration situation in certain states. You know, the one that's getting all the publicity recently is Minnesota. You know, they had that tragic shooting of the mother that was, I think, a 35-year-old. We've all seen the video numerous times, and while we weren't physically there, it seems pretty clear that her death could have been avoided and should have been avoided. Now, some things that are coming out right now, which I think people need to be aware of when they're evaluating our social climate and our political climate, is that some of these ICE agents are not as well trained. You know, they had a huge hiring of ICE agents in the past year because they want to deport more people and do all the things you hear about with immigration. And in order to do that, they've rushed the training. There's a couple of different types of ICE agents, and I'm not an expert, but the one type of ICE agent that a lot of times you see in these situations with people on the street, their training is not as intense. They definitely have less training than our police forces, for example. And you seem to see they have a lot of confrontations with many people that, you know, are not carrying weapons or anything. So people need to be aware of that. And, you know, just to give you an idea of Minnesota, which to me, if I lived in Minnesota, I would have a problem with this. Minneapolis has approximately 600 police agents, and they're getting ready to increase the total of ICE agents in Minneapolis area to 3,000. So they're going to have 5 times as many ICE agents as they are police. Well, there's something that's wrong with that. I know the first thing I think of if I was going to live there is I'm in a military state. I've got all these people wandering around carrying automatic weapons and masks on their faces. That doesn't give me a lot of cause for comfort. So these are some things that I bring up in relation to our social fabric. And I think a lot of people have a problem with this. You know, now, if you feel that we need this many ICE agents to take care of a lot of illegal folks in the country and such, then you have to look at the inconsistencies. Why are they concentrated in areas that for whatever reason seem to be what we call blue states, meaning that they've been generalized to have more Democrats than Republicans, or they're more liberal than conservatives? And I use that only because when you look at statistics, Texas, which is one of the states in our country that has a lot of immigration issues because they're a state that borders Mexico and stuff, and they're one of the most liberal states for allowing weapons of all types, that open carry state. And they have a lot more murders and crime activities and a lot of immigration problems, a lot more than Minnesota does, but yet they don't have this abundance of ICE agents in Texas. Why is that? Well, it's been speculated that they don't have that because they're a red state, and since our our current administration dislikes blue states a lot more than he does red states. He doesn't put the type of intimidating presence in the red states that the blue states currently have. So those are some things people may want to think about. Last but not least, which is a big topic, is what's going on in our foreign policy. We just deposed the dictator in Venezuela, which I think most people agree was a good thing in the sense that he was a very evil person and the people in Venezuela were tremendously suffering. So I think most of us are good with that, even though it was a drastic step. I think we most of us feel that it was probably going to be getting rid of somebody that needed to be eliminated from power. The troubling thing is the succession pattern. What are we actually going to be doing? Do we have a plan to make Venezuela a safer place and a more productive place for people to live? It seems like there hasn't been a coherent plan mentioned. I know the only thing that's been mentioned is we're going to somehow get more oil. Well, that's a concern. Is the United States going to be a country that kind of arbitrarily takes resources from foreign countries? That seems like it would be mirror activities that Russia does. Again, I have a problem with that until we get an exact blueprint and the legalities of that type of activity. What's probably even equally troubling is all the conjecture from, again, our administration about taking over Greenland in some fashion. Greenland is a neutral country, and they're part of the NATO alliance. So it's been conjectured that if we do go in and take over Greenland without their consent, that it's a warlike activity, obviously, and by charter, NATO would have to come in and defend Greenland. I don't know if that would happen or not because I'm not a foreign policy expert, but that's a kind of a scary thought. We would actually have a military presence against our own allies. Somehow that seems 100% wrong. Greenland has existed this way for a long time. I think I'm trying to think the term for it now. They're like a territory, I think, of Denmark. And so you're going to have to prove to me that if we don't take them over, either China or Russia is going to take them over. And I don't think we've seen evidence of that at this point. But again, we're selective. Ukraine, who's a country that's been invaded, and it's clear that they've been invaded, and millions of people, or not millions, but a lot of people have been killed in Ukraine. And we're trying to give Putin some latitude there under the current administration. And Putin obviously he is not going to end this thing peacefully unless we put so much negative consequences on Russia that he'll have no choice. But so far, under the current administration, we're not doing that. And it seems like Putin's just given a lot of lip service, and he's making our leadership look pretty inconsequential and not very intelligent. And last but not least, we're having a lot of activities in this country that have not been approved by Congress that are supposed to be, not just relating to war, but a lot of these different things. And what it shows is the fragility of our Constitution, because we all hearken back to the Constitution when it serves our purposes. For example, when people talk about the Second Amendment, how gun ownership should be completely at the discretion of our citizenry because it's in the Constitution. Without arguing that, if we're going to take that position, then you've got to be consistent, and the president needs to follow the Constitution. Well, he's bypassed the Constitution in a number of ways, which most experts feel are illegal, but he's getting away with it. So the scary thing is our method of doing government, to me, has got a lot of fragility right now, because what it's showing is if you get a strong enough iron-fisted ruler kind of with a dictatorial mentality, they're able to accomplish way more things that might be contrary to the majority of our population without any consequences. And our elected officials, especially in the same party as our administration, are scared to speak up in most cases because what rules in this country? As I've mentioned on previous podcasts, two things rule in this country: money and power. And so the party that's in power right now is scared to get our current presidential administration angry at them because they feel they might lose their elected position in their state because they get primaried. So they're keeping quiet about it. And unfortunately, silence is the worst thing that can happen, because when you go through history and study the most evil dictators like Mussolini, Joseph Stalin, and Adolf Hitler, what was the commonality of those three people? Well, the citizenry and the elected officials pretty much kept quiet. And by the time it was evident that these guys were super evil, it was too late for the countries to really do much against it. And that's what caused a lot of the world wars we've had in the past. So these are just some things for thought. You don't necessarily have to march in the streets. Of course, a lot of people do that because they want to have a presence. But you've got to put officials in office that are willing to govern with a conscious common sense and not be afraid to disagree. And we don't seem to have that type of leadership in our United States currently. So that's all for today. Everybody have a great weekend. Dress warmly. Be safe. And this is Marty Kaiser out.